Welcome to Behind the Boxer, where you get to not only hear about the story behind the boxer, but also inside and out of the ring. Today, we are talking to Sean Bradaigh. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in New York City. Um, I started boxing when I was 13. I'm in college now. I'm 20, and I started competing about 2 years ago. And I'm entering a tournament now called the Ring Masters. Last year I lost in the quarterfinals by split decision. And this year I plan on winning the whole thing and fighting at the Garden. It's the finals at the Garden.
Guys. So, what's the process of that like?
Well, so I have to fight 5 times total. The finals is planned for the end of April. So in the next less than 3 months, I'll be fighting 4 or 5 times, hopefully. Um, and yeah, I mean, I train 6 days a week. Today was my last training session before my fight on Saturday. Um, that usually consists of 2 or 3 days of sparring a week. When I have a fight coming up, so I really get ready for, the punches coming, the defense, working on all that because without sparring, it's hard to really get in the flow of things and be comfortable with a fight. I've been doing a lot of running too, sprints and long distance to lose the weight too. I'm on weight now though. I don't have to lose any more weight, so I'm ready.
Nice. So, in your opinion, what's the most important thing about a coach or trainer? What qualities should they have?
I think a few qualities a coach should have. One of them would be to be able to adapt to their fighter, because not every fighter fights the same way. Not every fighter gets motivated the same way. Um, and it's important that you have a coach that understands your style and helps you add to your style instead of changing everything that you're used to and trying to make you fight a certain way because not everyone's going to fight the same way. So I would say a coach that like can notice and figure out your strengths and um, and help you utilize them to win a fight.
That's very important. What actually started you into the field of boxing? What's your backstory?
So I actually have a fraternal twin brother. And growing up, we competed a lot in like sports and stuff, and I was always very competitive. I was always a little more pushy than him. I always wanted to win more than him. So I think deep down, it comes from a very competitive side of me. Um, when I was in my mom's womb, actually, um, with my brother, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, so I was gonna die um, if they didn't have a C-section on my mom. So I think I've been kind of fighting since the womb, if that makes sense. But yeah, I've always been competitive. I always liked things like wrestling and things like that. Growing up, my sport was mainly soccer, and then I played some rugby in high school. But boxing is really what combat sports in general, but I chose boxing is really what I loved once I became a teenager.
Nice. You mentioned that you started off doing a little MMA. How
Yeah.
would you say MMA is different from boxing, and why did you choose boxing over
One thing I liked about boxing is I could tell off the bat that there was a little more, in my opinion, a little more defense involved. I feel like when there's kicks and knees and elbows being thrown, it's a lot about kind of going through shots and continuing to fight. Whereas what I liked about boxing is you could avoid punches during the whole round and not even get touched, even when someone's trying to take your head off. Whereas I think in MMA that's a little more difficult. I do like grappling, so I hope to get back into that one day. But as far as striking, also boxing has quite a long history. MMA is a little more of a new sport, and I was always fascinated by like old time greats and stuff. I actually recently found out that Gene Tunney grew up a block away from where I grew up, so he was a former heavyweight champion of the world. Um, Uh, so yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
That's pretty cool. What would you say has been your greatest accomplishment so far, and also your greatest lesson?
So my greatest accomplishment will definitely be winning this tournament after I win it. But as of now, I would say, um, I mean, all my wins matter to me. I think the one that mattered the most to me was my first win because I lost my first fight. My first win was my second fight. Um, and a part of me was thinking before my second fight, if I lose the second fight in a row, maybe boxing's not for me. So I actually was the fight week of my second fight was one of the times I was most down in my life because I was really worried I was going to lose. And going into my first fight, I was convinced I was going to win. Like, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to lose. Like, I'm going to beat this guy. And I lost a split decision. So when I had my second fight, I thought I was so confident. I was so ready. And the guy beat me. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next. And I expected to lose the second fight. I was kind of like, oh, whatever. And I beat the guy pretty easily. And so that win mattered to me. I actually had some of my high school friends who were there. There was quite a large crowd for me. So that mattered to me. And then actually the following fight, which was the first fight of last year's Ringmasters tournament, which I'm doing now, I got two standing eight counts on the guy. That was probably my best performance so far. And um, this Olympian from Tokyo from 2020, Emmett Brennan from Ireland, who's like kind of became one of my mentors. He came to watch me fight that night, and I really wanted to make him proud because he's had over 200 amateur fights, fought at the Olympics and stuff. He's actually turning pro now. He came just to watch me, and I told myself, okay, I need a win in front of him. So I got that one. So that mattered too. The first one emotionally, the second one was kind of to prove, to him and to my family that I'm really good at this, And so I would say those two were the most important.
What would you, what advice would you give someone who lost a fight, and how would you tell them to come back from that?
So the issue with boxing, in my opinion, is boxing's not a sport you can lose repeatedly at. Like if you're playing soccer, you're playing basketball, you're playing other sports, losing's part of the game. And losing's part of boxing, but when you lose in boxing, you get hurt, you get demoralized, sometimes you get embarrassed. It's very difficult to go through. I think an amateur boxer who's going through a lot of losses should possibly reconsider doing the sport because in boxing, you're either 100% in or you're not doing it. Like, there's no point in just taking part because it's such a dangerous sport and you can actually get hurt. So, if someone's losing repeatedly, I would think to reconsider the sport. But obviously, one loss is nothing. Like, I lost my first fight and I really thought I was going to go 10 and 0 my first 10 fights. And I realized pretty quickly that it's very hard to do that. So, I would say if you only had one loss, like, go again. If you're still motivated, go again. Um, what I try and remind myself and what I like to do is tell myself, one day I'll be able to look back at all my accomplishments in boxing. And if I kind of stop my career now and slow down, then I'm not going to have things to show my children, things to look back on, see pictures of me fighting. And part of me wants to sit back when I'm like a 65-year-old man and think, oh, look at all the cool things I did when I was young. So I think you just got to keep pushing through. Unless you really don't love it, you really don't want it, don't be in it because it's too difficult if you're not fully in it. But one loss definitely shouldn't set you back. Only if you're losing repeatedly. But so yeah, I would say if you really want it, you really want to be a winner, just work harder and keep going. The universe is not fair. You're not always going to win if you put in all the work that you could. You just got to go again, try again next year or next time.
All right. So, there are some people that you look up to, like previous boxers in the industry that you're a fan of.
Um, Well, my two favorite boxers growing up were Roy Jones Jr. and Pernell Whitaker. So in terms of style, I look up to them a lot. Who actually got me into combat sports was Conor McGregor. He was my favorite fighter growing up. My dad's Irish, so there was that connection. I actually got to meet him one day, and it was great. I was at his fight when he won the second UFC title in Madison Square Garden. So Conor McGregor would be my biggest all-time inspiration. But in terms of boxing, pure boxing, Roy Jones, Pernell Whitaker, and then some of the boxers I train with now that are further along in their careers than I am, um, and I hope to get to their level. Um, so yeah.
You could fight with one boxer in their prime. That
That's a difficult question because if you pick the best of the best, I don't know if it's going to turn out well. Obviously, I always have to have the mentality I could beat anyone, but I really want to fight a boxer from back in the day because I always wonder, like, people always say, like, well, some people say, oh, the greatest ever, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis, like guys from like 7 years ago, and naturally I tend to think, well, the guys fighting now must be better, but so I'd say someone from a long time ago, maybe Gene Tunney, who I was talking about, who he's also of Irish descent, grew up a block away from where I grew up. So I'd say him. He was about my size, I'd say. Um, he won the heavyweight title, but back then heavyweight was lighter. Like I think it was over 175 or something. So and he was more of a boxer, like stick and move. So I don't think if I fought like a Jack Dempsey type guy, it might end up bad. But with him, I think it could be a fun fight. So I'd say Gene Tunney. Um, yeah, or of the newer guys. Yeah, not sure. I wanna fight Raheem Gonzalez, who's number one in the country in my weight class right now. Well, basically, he fights at 176. I fight at 165, but I want to fight him because he just won the world championships, and I want to see what it's like to fight someone at that level in the amateurs.
goes for the next 6 months.
So the next 6 months, I definitely want to win this tournament. It's kind of the only thing that matters to me in my life right now. And then after this tournament, I'd love to fight at the Summer Festival, which is a national tournament. I think it's in Lubbock, Texas. Um, I thought about doing the Haringey Box Cup in London, but I kind of want to get my name on like the national scene and start to get some recognition. Um, so yeah, I'd say by this summer, I'd like to have my first fight outside the city. Try and qualify for a national tournament or something like that.
What are your long-term goals?
So long term, it's always been for me. It's always been to qualify for the Olympics and win gold for the U.S. Um, so originally my goal was for 2024, but that's coming up and that's probably unlikely. Um, I've growing up, I always wanted to be a pro. Now I know I want a long amateur career, but I'm not sure yet if I want to do the whole pro career, especially if I don't get signed to a big promotion. Like I really would want to be signed by a big promotion because if not, I know a lot of professional boxers that are making like not enough money for all the work they're putting in. So my long-term goal is to be national champion and fight for the U.S. at the Olympics, the Pan American Games, the World Championships. Beyond that, I would probably turn pro if I got to that level because I'd probably get signed by a good promotion, make some good money. But if I didn't get to the national level in the amateurs, I don't think I would sign a pro contract. Um, and I'm still thinking. I just want to get as many fights in as possible. Want to get that experience, see how far I can get. I've been boxing my whole teenagehood, so like boxing's everything to me. So it would be hard to let it go, but I'd have to think about the pros and cons because if you're getting punched every day for 20 years, it's like I said before, it's not a sport to play with. So yeah.
Yeah. What's the what would you say the biggest difference amateur and pro is?
So what I've found, because I've sparred some pros, and growing up, before I was kind of competing, I always thought that the more pro fights you have, just the better you are. But what's interesting is you'll fight a pro who's, or you'll spar a pro who's 20 and 0, and he won't be as good as a pro who's 10 and 6 or something. Like it really depends on what fights you're taking as a pro. Often when I spar a pro, I take the first couple rounds and then they start to take on later in the sparring because they have that experience. And since as an amateur, I'm used to throwing a lot of punches, often the pros are less comfortable with that because they're used to the pro style, which takes a little longer to start the heaters, when they're sparring. So I'd say the main difference is an amateur just throws a lot more punches. The fights are shorter, so a speed fight, it's the amateur will sometimes have the advantage. But whenever it's long form sparring, like whenever I do 6+ rounds with a pro, the pro usually takes over. So it's usually the pro is more able to withstand shots and get through the hard rounds, whereas the amateur is, I'd say amateur boxing is more of a sport and professional boxing is more of like a battle, like a real battle where you have to dig deep. An amateur fight, if you keep using your jab, keep moving your head, sometimes it doesn't turn into that war. Sometimes in the third round it does. I've been in fights where it was just kind of a sport. You're just hitting each other and then you get out clean. And I've been in fights where I had to dig deep, and these are just 3 round fights. Um, so usually I'd say amateur is a little more sportish, also with headgear, more padding on the gloves and stuff. And pro is more like a real deal. That's why I would only consider a pro career if I was sure that I would do really well and make good money.
Boxing has shaped your life, and what is boxing to you?
Boxing to me, I don't want to say it's everything because my family matters to me, my girlfriend matters to me, my friends matter to me, um, school. But in terms of personal goals and personal achievements, I think every human in their life should go through something difficult to get to a goal because I think it really builds character and makes you who you are. And for me, that's boxing. Other people, it's different things. For me, it'll always be boxing. Like I said, even when I'm retired and everything, I'll always have posters. I have a poster of Ali Foreman that I just took down. I'm gonna figure out where to put it. I have a Canelo poster, Conor McGregor poster. So it'll always be part of my life, whether I'm competing or not. But for me, I always wanted to compete because I always thought that I could be that guy. I always thought I could be like my idols. So I always wanted to try and compete and win.
Yeah. And how has boxing helped to shape you into the person you are?
So discipline is massive. Like if you don't have discipline in boxing, you're not going to go anywhere. And in high school, I had no discipline. Um, so once I started competing about 2 years ago, my discipline just changed like this, and I became in better shape. Like right now, I'm not drinking. I haven't smoked anything in 2 years. Um, so yeah, it's just made me a healthier person. Another thing is health. Like other than the getting punched in the face, which is not very healthy. Like when you box, like you're very healthy. Like you, unless you're going, up and down in weight like crazy, you're usually at a fit weight. Um, you're not eating too much junk food if you're doing well, if you're training properly. Yeah, it just makes you healthy and disciplined. I think that's a good thing. Yeah, so if you want to follow me in this tournament, it's the Ringmasters Championships. The finals will be at the Garden. It's expected to be on April 22nd, but that date is not set yet. So follow me. My first fight is at Champs Boxing Club in New Rochelle on Saturday, and then I'll be fighting every few weeks for the next couple months. So follow me on Instagram at Sean SeanObrd BXG for boxing. So Sean O'Brady boxing basically. Um, and yeah, you'll find all my info on there. Yeah, follow my journey. I'm gonna win this tournament, and yeah, I can't wait.